Welcome back to Lina's Romantasy collection, where the alphas are dominant and the heroines are unapologetically sassy. Before we dive into today's hilarious chaos, I have a quick question for the pack. What is the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to you in a dead silent room? Let me know in the comments, and drop a ferret or a silver spoon emoji if your own pet sidekick is currently judging your life choices. Today we have an epic one for you. It's adventurous, it's intense, and it involves a very flustered culinary artist and a very distracted alpha. But before we start, if you want to support the channel and get early access to more stories like this, hit that join button down below. Your support keeps our new kitchen running and these stories coming. Now, take a deep breath. The pastries are on the floor. The hall is silent. And the alpha has just spotted his mate. Let's read. Chapter 1. The Echo Ridge Lunar Summit Prep Kitchen mirrored a war zone. Heat radiated from the industrial ovens, slicking sweat across Tamsin's forehead. She stood at her stainless steel station, her favorite blade pulled from the battered leather chef's knife roll resting near the sink. She diced bell peppers with practiced, rhythmic speed, her hazel eyes scanning the chaotic room. Aunt Beatrice stood near the simmering stovetop, wielding her heavy wooden stirring spoon like a broadsword. She pointed the sauce-covered wood at a passing waiter. "You drop those plates, I take your thumbs," Beatrice warned, her voice cutting through the clatter of pans. Matteo, the sous chef, paced near the walk-in freezer. He clutched a clipboard to his chest, his breathing fast and shallow. "We are short 36 tartlets," Matteo said, his voice cracking. "The wolves are going to eat us. They will consume us right after the appetizers. I read the folklore." "They hired us to cook, Matteo, not to serve as the main course," Tamsin said. She wiped her hands on a side towel and pushed a stray honey blonde curl back into her messy bun. "Breathe. Lily is finishing the tartlets right now." Lily stood at the far counter, humming a pop song while arranging fresh fruit on small pastries, completely unfazed by the surrounding panic. Tamsin needed this night to go flawless. She had a looming deadline for a commercial kitchen lease in the downtown district. The upfront cost was $60,000. It was a staggering financial hurdle, but securing that location meant total freedom. She could stop catering chaotic wilderness events and finally run a stable, high-end empire. "If this summit fails, I lose the lease and spend the next 5 years cooking in a drafty garage," Tamsin thought. A sharp hiss sounded from the corner. Tamsin turned. Inside a floral-patterned pet carrier, Captain Whiskers threw a fit. The ferret pawed at the mesh screen, his teeth bared in an irritated scowl. He hated cages. "I know, Captain," Tamsin murmured, stepping away from her cutting board. "It is loud in here." She unzipped the carrier. The ferret scrambled out, scurrying straight up her arm and diving into the deep front pocket of her white chef's apron. He curled into a ball, safe against her stomach. "You cannot take a rodent into the main hall," Matteo gasped, pointing a trembling finger at her apron. "He is a domestic ferret, and he is cleaner than half the staff," Tamsin replied. "Besides, he stays out of sight." "The pastry tower is ready," Lily called out, stepping back to reveal a towering silver tray loaded with delicate, cream-filled pastries. Matteo stepped toward it, his hands shaking so hard his clipboard rattled. "I cannot carry it. I will drop it. My knees are liquid." Tamsin sighed. "I will take it. Keep the entrees warm." She marched over to the silver tray, hoisted the cold metal structure onto her shoulder, and kicked the double doors open. The quiet, tense atmosphere of the main hall awaited. Chapter 2. The grand hall of the Echo Ridge Lodge felt like a cathedral. Hundreds of wolves sat at long, round tables, their posture rigid. Nobody spoke. Nobody clinked a glass. The silence carried a sharp, predatory edge. At the front of the room stood Alpha Leander. He commanded the podium. Broad-shouldered and towering, he gripped the edges of the wooden stand. A jagged, faded scar caught the dim light, slashing across his left collarbone. He spoke with a deep, resonant rumble that forced the crowd to lean forward. Tamsin slipped through the side entrance. She hugged the shadows behind the VIP tables, balancing the towering tray of pastries on her right shoulder. Her boots made zero sound on the thick carpet. She focused on the dessert station 10 yards away. In her apron pocket, Captain Whiskers shifted. The ferret poked his head out, his dark little eyes locked onto a silver soup spoon resting on the edge of the nearest VIP table. He let out a soft, eager squeak and wiggled forward. Tamsin clamped her free hand over the pocket, pushing him back down. The movement caused the heavy tray to sway. She corrected her balance, but the ferret retaliated. Displeased with his confinement, Whiskers flicked his fluffy tail upward. The soft fur brushed right under Tamsin's nostrils. A sharp tickle seized her nose. Tamsin squeezed her eyes shut, trying to fight the sensation. She bit her lip. She held her breath. The tickle transformed into a burning, undeniable urge. I cannot ruin this silence, or they will throw me out without a single dime, Tamsin thought, panic rising in her chest. She took another step. The ferret flicked his tail again. The defense line crumbled. Tamsin inhaled a sharp, jagged breath and let out a loud, echoing sneeze. The sound cracked like a whip in the silent room. Startled by her own noise, her shoulders jerked. The towering silver tray tipped too far right. Gravity took control. The entire structure slipped from her grasp and crashed onto the hardwood floor. Metal slammed against wood. Dozens of delicate pastries exploded into clouds of powdered sugar and crushed berries. The noise rivaled a car crash. Every head in the grand hall snapped toward her. Hundreds of glowing eyes locked onto her position. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. At the podium, Alpha Leander stopped mid-sentence. His jaw tightened. He turned his head slowly, his golden eyes finding the human woman standing over a pile of ruined desserts. The room waited for his wrath. Chapter 3. Leander gripped the wooden podium. The echoing crash of metal and shattered food interrupted his annual security address. For a split second, annoyance flared in his chest. He turned his gaze toward the shadows behind the VIP section, expecting to find a clumsy Delta wolf. Instead, he saw a human woman. Honey blonde hair escaped a messy bun, hazel eyes wide with shock. Powdered sugar dusted her black boots. Then, the air shifted. A unique, captivating fragrance hit Leander's senses. It cut straight through the smell of roasted meats and polished wood, sweet almond and fresh rain. The scent rushed into his lungs, sparking a wild, primitive fire deep in his chest. They pushed back their chairs, stepping back to the edge of the table. The Beta and Gamma viewed the interruption as a threat. They pushed back their chairs, stepping forward to intercept the intruder. I must stop them before they scare her out of the territory, Leander thought, his heart drumming a frantic rhythm. Hold, Leander commanded. He did not yell. He pushed his alpha aura into the single word. The raw force of his voice crashed into the enforcers. Jason Ryland froze mid-step, their heads bowing on instinct, unable to fight the order. The human woman, however, did not flinch. She lacked the wolf blood required to feel the command. She just stared at the broken pastries, then lifted her gaze to meet his. She did not lower her eyes. She did not bare her neck. She stood her ground, a defiant spark lighting up her hazel eyes despite the disaster at her feet. Leander felt a sudden, strange tightness in his throat. He leaned into the microphone, his golden eyes locked entirely on her. "Bless you, mate," Leander said. The deep, amplified words rolled across the silent hall. A collective gasp rippled through the pack. Murmurs erupted, chairs scraped against the floor. The woman's cheeks flushed a bright, vivid crimson. She took one look at the staring crowd, grabbed the edge of her white apron, and bolted back through the swinging kitchen doors. Leander ignored the rising chaos in the room. He stepped down from the stage. Jace moved to follow him, opening his mouth to speak. Leander held up a hand, silencing his beta. He needed to find the kitchen. He needed to find her. Chapter 4. Tamsin burst through the double doors, letting them swing shut behind her. She leaned her back against the metal frame and dragged a hand down her face. Mateo dropped his clipboard. "Where is the tray? Why are you empty-handed?" "The tray is on the floor of the main hall," Tamsin said, her voice hollow. "The pastries are destroyed." Mateo let out a distressed wail and buried his face in his hands. Beatrice marched over, pointing her wooden spoon at the doors. "Did they attack you? Tell me who to hit." "Nobody attacked me," Tamsin said. She pulled Captain Whiskers out of her pocket and set him on the tile floor. "Your tail cost us a $60,000 lease." The ferret ignored her, his nose twitching. He scurried under a prep table, spotting a dropped silver spoon near the drain. Before Tamsin could issue orders to salvage the remaining food, the kitchen doors pushed open. Alpha Leander stepped into the chaotic room. Up close, the man was a mountain. Broad, imposing, and dressed in a tailored dark suit. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking around the kitchen with an awkward, hesitant expression. He took 2 steps toward Tamsin. His boot came down right next to the drain. Captain Whiskers hissed. The ferret lunged forward, dragging the stolen silver spoon right across the Alpha's path. Leander's boot caught the metal handle. He lost his footing, pitching forward with a startled grunt. The towering leader of the Echo Ridge pack crashed hard into the nearest prep table. The metal table buckled under his weight. 2 massive bowls of hazelnut cream tipped over, spilling thick, sticky filling across Leander's suit jacket and pooling on the tile floor. The kitchen went dead silent. Mateo looked ready to pass out. Leander pushed himself off the broken table, wiping hazelnut cream from his lapel. He looked at Tamsin, his golden eyes wide, preparing to apologize. Tamsin crossed her arms. He expects me to cower and apologize, but a ruined business deal scares me far more than an alpha with a messy suit, she thought. That hazelnut cream took 3 hours to prepare, Tamsin stated, her voice steady and clear. The table costs $400. The ruined pastries in the hall amount to $1,000. I expect full financial compensation for the damages before you leave this kitchen. Leander froze. He stared at her, the sticky cream dripping from his sleeve. Nobody spoke to him like that. Nobody handed him a bill after an accident. A slow, brilliant smile broke across his rugged face. He was completely, utterly stunned. I will pay for every drop, Leander said, his voice dropping an octave. But I have a business proposal for you first. Chapter 5. Alpha. Leander stood in the center of the Echo Ridge prep kitchen. Thick hazelnut cream dripped from his dark suit lapel and pooled around his boots. The stainless steel prep table remained buckled in the middle, a total casualty of his fall. Tamsin crossed her arms. Her black boots still bore a heavy dusting of white powdered sugar from the disaster in the main hall. She tapped her right index finger against her thigh. She did not blink. She waited for the terrifying pack leader to explain himself. "A business proposal," Tamsin echoed, her voice flat and even. "You ruined my dessert station, crushed my table, and sent my sous chef into a panic spiral. Mateo is currently sitting on the floor near a dropped clipboard, questioning his career choices." "What kind of business do we have to discuss?" Leander peeled the ruined suit jacket off his broad shoulders. He tossed the sticky garment onto a nearby stool. Lily, the unfazed prep worker, tossed him a clean white towel. Leander caught it out of the air. He wiped the sweet filling from his hands, his golden eyes anchoring on Tamsin. "You need a commercial kitchen lease," Leander said. He kept his voice low, a deep rumble that bounced off the tile walls. "I heard you mention it in the hall right before the crash. You need a permanent space in the downtown district." Tamsin stiffened. Her heart drummed a wild, frantic rhythm against her ribs. She needed that lease. Securing that location meant total financial freedom. It meant leaving chaotic wilderness banquets behind. But the upfront cost was a ruinous $60,000. It was an obscene amount of money for an independent culinary artist. "The lease is $60,000, Tamsin stated. She lifted her chin, refusing to show weakness. "That is the price of entry. I do not take loans from strangers." "It is not a loan," Leander countered. He took a single step forward, mindful to avoid the spilled cream. "It is an exchange. I will wire the $60,000 to your business account by midnight. I will also cover the buckled table and the ruined pastries. You walk away with your empire." Aunt Beatrice stepped forward. She lowered her sauce-covered wooden stirring spoon a fraction of an inch, her eyes narrowing. "Nothing comes free in this town, Wolf. Tell her the catch." Under a clean counter, Captain Whiskers let out a grumpy chitter. The ferret dragged his stolen silver spoon into a dark corner, claiming his prize. Leander rubbed the back of his neck. A faint trace of pink touched his rugged jawline. "Tomorrow morning begins the Lunar Summit Trek. It is a mandatory pack tradition, a scavenger hunt through Echo Gorge. As Alpha, I am required to participate in a pair. My Beta and Gamma have spent the past 3 weeks driving me insane, trying to pair me off with a high-ranking wolf." Tamsin raised an eyebrow. The pieces clicked into place. "You want me to be your partner? A human caterer? You want to use me as a shield to escape pack politics?" "I want a partner who does not bow the second I enter a room," Leander corrected. "I want someone who hands me a bill when I break a table." "I am looking at a terrifying apex predator dripping in dessert filling, and he is offering me the keys to my empire." "Take the deal," Tamsin told herself, the internal voice screaming with logic. "I have rules," Tamsin said. She pointed a finger at his chest. "Strict boundaries. This is a professional transaction. I am weary of messy relationships. I cater weddings every weekend. I see the tears, the screaming, and the ruined cakes. I want zero romance. I want accountability. We hike the trail, we complete the event, and we part ways as business associates." Leander tossed the dirty towel onto the buckled table. He did not argue. He did not push his dominant aura. He just offered a sharp, intuitive smile that reached his golden eyes. "Zero romance," Leander agreed. "Strict business. Bring your gear to the Echo Gorge trailhead tomorrow at dawn." He gave a polite nod to Aunt Beatrice, sidestepped the sticky floor, and pushed through the double doors. Tamsin stood in the quiet kitchen, the reality of the deal hitting her like a punch to the gut. She had her lease. Now she had to survive a trek with a wolf. Chapter 6. The early morning air held a sharp, crisp chill. Tamsin stood in her gravel driveway, her breath puffing in faint white clouds. She pulled open the back hatch of her sleek, metallic plum SUV. She wore sturdy brown hiking boots, thick denim jeans, and a warm forest green jacket. The powdered sugar was gone. Today, she meant business. She grabbed her battered leather chef's knife roll from the porch steps. She tossed the heavy roll into the trunk, ensuring the sharp tools rested flat against the floorboards. "You do not need a paring knife to hike a trail," Aunt Beatrice called out from the front door. "I am a culinary artist," Tamsin replied, slamming the trunk shut. "If I find wild mushrooms in the gorge, I am harvesting them. We have a new commercial kitchen to stock." Beatrice marched down the wooden steps. She carried a stack of plastic containers filled with spicy Caribbean jerk chicken and a clean, dry wooden spoon. She handed the food to Tamsin. "Keep your strength up. Do not let that oversized dog boss you around in the woods." Tamsin opened the back passenger door. She secured a large, floral-patterned pet carrier onto the seat, looping the seatbelt through the top handle. Inside, Captain Whiskers paced in circles. The dramatic ferret hissed at the plastic mesh, angry about the early wake-up call. "The Alpha wired the money," Tamsin said, checking the buckles on the carrier. "The funds hit the account at midnight, exactly as he promised. He showed accountability. This is just a simple, professional hike." A low, powerful engine rumble interrupted the quiet morning. A deep, sapphire blue pickup truck rolled down the street and parked behind her plum SUV. The truck gleamed in the rising sunlight, a massive machine built for rugged terrain. The driver's side door swung open. Alpha Leander stepped onto the gravel. He wore dark cargo pants, heavy steel-toed boots, and a thick flannel shirt that stretched tight across his broad shoulders. The jagged scar on his collarbone peeked out from the unbuttoned collar. The sticky hazelnut cream from the previous night was nowhere in sight. He walked up the driveway with smooth, confident strides. Beatrice stepped right into his path. She raised her clean wooden spoon, pointing the rounded tip directly at the center of Leander's chest. The Alpha halted. He stood 2 feet taller than the older woman, but he did not try to intimidate her. "Listen to me, Wolf," Beatrice warned, her voice carrying a sharp edge. "I do not care about your rank. I do not care about your fangs. My niece is a brilliant woman who builds things with her bare hands. If she returns to this house with a single scratch on her face, I will make a stew out of your tail." Tamsin held her breath. Pack leaders commanded respect. They demanded submission. She braced herself for a harsh reprimand, waiting for Leander to push his alpha aura into the yard. Instead, Leander clasped his hands behind his back. He bowed his head, offering Beatrice a deep, genuine nod of respect. "You have my word," Leander said, his tone solemn and steady. "I will shield her from the wind itself. She will return exactly as she leaves." "He takes my terrifying aunt seriously, instead of pulling rank. That is a dangerous point in his favor," Tamsin observed, a strange warmth settling in her chest. Beatrice studied his face. She lowered the wooden spoon and stepped aside. "Good. Tamsin, grab your things. Do not keep the man waiting." Tamsin grabbed her heavy floral backpack from the porch. She pulled Captain Whiskers out of the carrier, tucking the squirming ferret into a deep, fleece-lined pouch on the front of her jacket. The ferret grumbled but settled against the warmth. "Ready?" Leander asked, a bright spark of amusement dancing in his golden eyes. "Lead the way, Alpha," Tamsin said. She locked her plum SUV, ignoring the sudden flutter of nerves in her stomach. The journey was about to begin. Chapter 7. The Echo Gorge trailhead sat at the base of a massive, jagged mountain. Tall pine trees created a natural green canopy over the dirt path. The morning mist clung to the branches, leaving a damp, earthy smell in the air. Leander parked the sapphire blue pickup truck near a wooden welcome sign. Tamsin hopped out of the passenger side, her heavy floral backpack resting in the truck bed. 2 men stood blocking the entrance to the trail. Jace and Rylan. The Beta and Gamma wore matching dark tactical gear. They crossed their arms, their expressions tight with worry. Leander walked to the back of the truck. He grabbed his own dark canvas pack and slung it over one shoulder. He looked at his enforcers and released a long, tired sigh. "I gave you both clear orders," Leander stated, his voice calm but firm. "You are entering an uncontrolled gorge with a human," Jace argued, stepping forward. The Beta kept his eyes cast downward, showing respect, but his tone held stubborn defiance. "The Lunar Summit Trek spans 10 miles of rough terrain. We belong at your side." "You hover," Leander countered. He rubbed the back of his neck, frustration bleeding into his words. "You shadow my every move. I need space to breathe. You will patrol the outer perimeter of the gorge. You will ensure the boundaries are secure. You will leave us to complete the scavenger hunt alone." Rylan opened his mouth to protest. Leander dropped his canvas pack onto the dirt. He straightened his spine. The casual, friendly demeanor vanished. The raw force of his alpha presence slammed into the clearing. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on the 2 wolves. "Perimeter," Leander commanded. The word held a physical push, a weight that drove Jace and Rylan to take a step backward. The enforcers bowed their heads. They turned in unison and jogged into the tree line, disappearing into the thick brush to follow their orders. Tamsin stood by the truck bed. She hauled her heavy floral backpack onto her shoulders. She tightened the straps, pulling the heavy load against her spine. In her front pouch, Captain Whiskers poked his head out, his nose twitching at the fresh forest air. "They mean well," Leander said, his tone softening as he turned back to her. "But they forget I am a man before I am a leader." "My sous chef texts me every 10 minutes to make sure the ovens are off," Tamsin replied, offering a sympathetic nod. "I understand hovering." They hit the trail. The first half-mile featured a brutal, steep incline. The path cut straight up the side of a rocky hill. Loose gravel and slick moss covered the ground. Tamsin pushed forward, her sturdy boots crunching against the stones. She maintained a steady pace, refusing to slow down. Her thigh muscles burned. The floral backpack weighed her down, the straps digging into her shoulders. She drew in sharp, ragged breaths. She slipped on a patch of wet moss, her right boot sliding backward. She caught her balance, her jaw tight with determination. She refused to ask for a break. Leander walked beside her. He did not break a sweat. His breathing remained slow and even. He watched her struggle for exactly 2 seconds. Without a single word, Leander reached out. He caught the top handle of her floral backpack. He unclipped the chest strap with practiced ease, sliding the heavy bag off her shoulders. He swung the floral pack over his left arm, carrying it alongside his own canvas bag. Tamsin stopped. She stared at him, her chest heaving. "I can carry my own gear. We are business partners. I pull my own weight." "You are carrying the ferret," Leander pointed out, his golden eyes bright with quiet amusement. "I am carrying the snacks. It is an equal division of labor. Keep walking, Tamsin." He did not make a grand show of his strength. Nor did he lecture me on human weakness, Tamsin noted, the realization chipping away at her strict boundaries. He just saw a problem and fixed it. She adjusted the ferret pouch, hiding a small smile, and continued up the mountain. Chapter 8. The dense pine trees swallowed the morning sunlight, casting long shadows across the dirt trail. The silence in the deep woods stretched out, thick and unbroken. Tamsin marched forward, her boots avoiding tree roots and loose rocks. Leander walked beside her, the floral backpack looking ridiculous and small against his massive frame. Tamsin tried to maintain a strict, professional atmosphere. She mentally reviewed her plans for the new commercial kitchen. She cataloged the stainless steel appliances she needed to order. She focused on the $60,000 lease. "So," Leander said, shattering the quiet, "does the ferret have a culinary degree, or is he just the kitchen manager?" Tamsin blinked, pulled from her thoughts. She glanced down at her front pouch. Captain Whiskers hung halfway out of the pocket. The ferret had the stolen silver spoon from the prep kitchen clamped firmly in his tiny paws. "Captain Whiskers oversees quality control," Tamsin answered, keeping her tone serious. "He ensures all metal objects meet his personal shine standards. If they fail, he hoards them under the sofa." "A tough boss," Leander noted. He stepped over a fallen branch. "My beta, Jace, shares a similar management style. If the pack house runs out of coffee, Jace paces the hallway and growls at the furniture. I once caught him threatening a toaster." Tamsin bit the inside of her cheek. She wanted to remain stoic. She wanted to prove she was unaffected by him. "A toaster," Tamsin repeated. "It burned his bagel," Leander explained, his face a mask of total sincerity. He considered it a direct challenge to his authority. He demanded the appliance submit. The toaster, being a machine, refused. It was a tense morning for the Echo Ridge pack.
A short, bright laugh escaped Tamsin's lips. The sound slipped out before she could lock it down. It was genuine and loud, ringing through the quiet trees. Leander stopped walking. He turned his head, his golden eyes wide and captivated. He stared at her face, watching the light reach her hazel eyes.
His chest rose with a deep inhale, pulling in her scent of sweet almond and fresh rain. Tamsin caught his stare. The laughter faded into a warm, electric tension. She cleared her throat, suddenly hyper-aware of the quiet woods and his towering presence. "You are making up stories to entertain me," Tamsin accused, pointing a finger at him. "I am a terrifying apex predator," Leander replied, a slow smirk lifting the corner of his mouth. "I do not make up stories. I share factual pack history." Whiskers chattered, waving the silver spoon like a tiny sword. "I built a giant fortress around my heart to keep out arrogant jerks," Tamsin thought, a flutter of panic mixing with the warmth in her chest. "But a wolf with terrible jokes is sneaking right past the gate." "We have 3 miles left to the first checkpoint," Tamsin said, forcing her attention back to the dirt path. "Save your breath, Alpha. The trail only gets steeper from here." "I have plenty of breath, Tamsin," Leander promised, falling into step right beside her. "And I have plenty of stories." They continued their trek. The awkward, heavy silence of 2 strangers vanished, replaced by the easy, vibrant rhythm of shared banter. Tamsin found herself smiling at the pine trees, no longer thinking about the kitchen lease. She listened to the rumble of his voice, letting the woods guide them forward. Chapter 9. The Echo Gorge trail widened, revealing a rushing creek that cut straight across their path. Cold mountain water tumbled over slick gray stones, churning into white foam. The roar of the current swallowed the quiet sounds of the pine forest. Tamsin stopped at the water's edge. Her brown hiking boots dug into the damp soil. She studied the scattered boulders forming a treacherous bridge to the other side. A thick coat of green moss covered the stepping stones. "This looks like an insurance liability," Tamsin said, raising her voice over the rushing water. "If I break an ankle, who covers the medical bills? The pack or the wilderness rangers?" Leander stood beside her. He carried her floral backpack draped over his left arm, holding his own dark canvas bag on his right shoulder. The dark flannel shirt stretched tight across his chest as he surveyed the creek. "Wolves do not use insurance," Leander replied, a smirk lifting the corner of his mouth. "If you fall, I carry you the rest of the way. It builds character." Tamsin patted the front pouch of her forest green jacket. Captain Whiskers poked his head out. The ferret clutched the stolen silver spoon from the prep kitchen, tapping the metal handle against the fabric. "Keep your paws inside the ride, Captain," Tamsin warned the pet. "We are crossing open water." Leander stepped forward. His steel-toed boots found the first gray rock. He moved with fluid grace. He did not test his footing. He leaped from stone to stone, his long strides eating up the distance. He reached the opposite bank in seconds. He turned around, dropping the 2 bags onto the dry dirt. He walked back to the water's edge and held out a large, calloused hand. "Your turn," Leander called out. "Step where I stepped." Tamsin stared at his outstretched hand. He expects me to freeze and beg for an escort. But I navigate wet commercial kitchens during wedding season for a living, she thought, locking her jaw. "I manage fine on my own," Tamsin shouted back. "I once caught a 3-tier red velvet cake while sliding across a butter-greased floor. The bride was weeping, the groomsmen were shouting, and I saved the fondant. A little mountain stream will not defeat me." She took her first step. Her boot gripped the dry edge of a stone. She exhaled a sharp breath and jumped to the second rock. The gap required a wide stance. She landed safe. She moved to the third, her confidence growing. The cold water rushed inches below her soles, spraying fine mist against her denim jeans. She aimed for the 4th rock. It sat near the center of the creek. A thick patch of wet moss coated the surface. Tamsin brought her right foot down. The moss gave way. Her heel skidded across the slick stone. Friction vanished. Tamsin pitched forward. Her arms flailed. The rushing creek rushed up to meet her face. She braced for the freezing plunge and the sharp impact of the rocks. A strong hand clamped around her waist. Leander moved faster than a human eye could track. He splashed into the shallow water, ignoring the icy current soaking his cargo pants. He caught her mid-fall. His arm wrapped around her jacket, pulling her flush against his solid chest. The momentum halted in a split second. Captain Whiskers chattered from the pouch, annoyed by the sudden jolt, waving his spoon at the rushing water. Tamsin gasped. Her hands landed flat against his flannel shirt. Her heart slammed a frantic, erratic rhythm against her ribs, a wild drumbeat echoing in her ears. "I said step where I stepped," Leander murmured. His voice dropped low, rumbling through his chest and vibrating against her palms. Tamsin tilted her head up. Their faces were inches apart. She studied the rugged lines of his strong jaw, the faint scar peeking from his collar, and the striking gold of his eyes. He did not look like a terrifying predator. He looked worried. She did not pull away. She maintained eye contact, searching his expression. A strange reaction occurred. The Alpha, leader of the Echo Ridge pack, blinked. A dark pink flush crept up his neck, spreading across his cheekbones. He broke eye contact, looking down at the rushing water. He cleared his throat, his broad shoulders tensing. He was blushing. "Let's get you to dry land," Leander said. His voice lost its usual smooth confidence, adopting a rough, shy edge. He did not let her walk. He scooped her up, cradling her against his chest, and waded through the remaining water. Tamsin held her breath, the sheer warmth of his skin radiating through his damp clothes, realizing the big bad wolf possessed a soft center. Chapter 10. Leander set Tamsin down on the dry dirt of the opposite bank. Water dripped from his dark cargo pants, pooling around his steel-toed boots. He ignored the cold. His chest still felt tight from the way she looked at him. No fear, no submission, just calm, analytical curiosity. My enforcers would drop dead from shock if they saw me blushing like a pup over a human stare, Leander thought, rubbing the back of his neck to hide the lingering heat. Tamsin adjusted her jacket, checking the front pouch to ensure Captain Whiskers survived the rescue. The ferret hissed at Leander's wet boots, retreating into the fleece lining. "Your pants are soaked," Tamsin pointed out. "They will dry," Leander replied. He picked up both the dark canvas pack and her floral backpack. "We should keep moving. The chill sets in fast once the sun dips behind the ridge." They resumed their hike. The trail flattened, winding through a dense grove of ancient pine trees. The awkward tension from the creek crossing hung in the air, thick and unspoken. Leander needed to break the quiet. He needed to hear her laugh again. "Two truths and a lie," Leander announced, matching her steady pace. Tamsin glanced sideways. "What?" "It is a game. We need a distraction. I state 3 facts about myself. 2 are real, 1 is false. You guess the lie." Tamsin tapped her right index finger against her thigh, considering the rules. "Fine, go." Leander thought for a moment. "I once fought a bear over a fresh salmon. I hate the taste of cooked venison. I sing loud pop songs in the shower." Tamsin did not hesitate. "The bear is the lie." "Wrong," Leander said, a smirk returning to his face. "The bear was young and stubborn. We wrestled for 10 minutes before he surrendered the fish. The lie is the venison. I eat anything cooked over an open fire." "So, the terrifying Alpha of Echo Ridge sings pop music in the shower," Tamsin noted, a bright spark of amusement returning to her hazel eyes. "I will add that to my business ledger." "Your turn," Leander prompted. Tamsin adjusted her stride, stepping over a thick tree root. "I despise baking bread. I want to franchise my catering business across 5 cities. I am terrified of romance." Leander studied her profile. He watched the way her jaw tightened. The easy banter faded, replaced by a raw, honest energy. He knew scent was an instinct, but reading a person required patience. "You do not want to franchise," Leander guessed, his voice losing the playful edge. Tamsin nodded. "Correct. Managing 1 luxurious commercial kitchen is my only goal. Franchising means trusting strangers with my recipes. I prefer total control." "And the romance?" Leander asked, pushing the boundary just a fraction. Tamsin sighed. The sound carried a tired exhaustion. "I cater weddings every single weekend. I see the cruelest parts of human nature. Brides screaming over napkin colors, grooms hiding in closets, families tearing each other apart over seating charts. Love is messy. It strips away logic. I prefer contracts. I prefer accountability. A business deal never wakes up and decides it no longer respects you." Leander listened, absorbing the burden of her words. She built a fortress out of practicality to keep the pain out. "My turn," Leander said, keeping his tone gentle. "I despise pack politics. I want to build a cabin far away from the territory borders. I fear losing my humanity." Tamsin looked at him, her hazel eyes searching his face. The cabin is the lie. You love your people too much to leave them. True, Leander admitted. But the fear is real. Leadership demands cold, brutal choices. Every day, I have to be a shield, a judge, and a weapon. Sometimes I look in the mirror and wonder if the man is gone, leaving only the wolf behind. It is an isolating existence. Tamsin stopped walking. She turned to face him on the dirt trail. She did not offer empty platitudes or generic comfort. She reached out and tapped the center of his chest, right over his heart. A monster does not blush when a woman looks at him, Tamsin said. The man is still in there, Leander. The simple, direct truth knocked the breath from his lungs. They stood in the quiet grove, the game discarded, leaving only a profound, shifting connection. Chapter 11. The sun dipped below the jagged mountain ridge, painting the sky in deep shades of violet and bruised orange. The temperature plummeted. Tamsin pulled her forest green jacket tighter around her shoulders. Leander led them off the main trail into a small, sheltered clearing. A ring of blackened stones sat in the center, remnants of a past scavenger hunt campfire. Tall pines formed a natural windbreak. We camp here, Leander said. He dropped the dark canvas pack and the floral backpack near the stones. Tamsin unzipped the front pouch of her jacket. She lifted Captain Whiskers out, placing the grumbling ferret onto the dirt. She grabbed the floral pet carrier from her backpack and popped it open. Inside, Captain, Tamsin ordered. The woods wake up at night. You are not on the menu. The ferret hissed, waving the stolen silver spoon, but crawled into the mesh carrier. Tamsin zipped the door shut. She turned her attention to the food. Aunt Beatrice packed 4 plastic containers. Tamsin pulled them out, setting them on a flat rock. The aroma of spicy Caribbean jerk chicken filled the crisp air. Tamsin also unpacked her own culinary additions, roasted sweet potatoes with honey glaze and a sharp cabbage slaw. Leander gathered dry branches from the brush. He arranged the wood inside the stone ring. He struck a match from his gear, coaxing a bright, crackling fire to life. The flames pushed the cold back, casting warm orange light across the clearing. I expected him to demand a fresh kill, but he builds a fire like a normal camper, Tamsin thought, watching him work. She opened the containers, dividing the feast onto 2 tin plates. A sharp, metallic clinking sound interrupted the peaceful campsite. Tamsin turned her head. Inside the floral carrier, Captain Whiskers refused to accept defeat. The ferret shoved the handle of his silver spoon through the small gap where the 2 zippers met. He wiggled the metal, applying leverage. The zipper teeth separated. Hey! Tamsin shouted, dropping a serving fork. Whiskers burst through the opening. The ferret bolted past the campfire, making a direct line for the dark brush at the edge of the clearing. A rustling sound echoed from the shadows. A wild mountain squirrel, twice the size of a city squirrel, hopped onto a fallen log. The squirrel chattered a harsh territorial warning. Captain Whiskers did not retreat. The pampered domestic pet dropped his silver spoon, fluffed his tail to maximum volume, and charged the wild rodent. He is going to get shredded, Tamsin gasped, rushing forward. Leander moved without a sound. The alpha crossed the clearing in 3 long strides. The wild squirrel lunged, sharp teeth bared. Leander reached the log. He snatched Captain Whiskers by the scruff of the neck, lifting the furious ferret high into the air. With his free hand, he tossed a small pine cone at the squirrel. The wild rodent shrieked and darted up the nearest tree, vanishing into the branches. Leander stood near the tree line, holding the dangling ferret. Whiskers twisted, his tiny paws pedaling in the air. The pet locked eyes with the towering Alpha. Leander did not scold the animal. He just raised an eyebrow. "You lack the weight class for that fight, little warrior." Whiskers stopped thrashing. The ferret let out a soft, low chitter. He reached out a paw, patting Leander's calloused thumb. It was a clear, unmistakable gesture of approval. "He likes you," Tamsin said, stopping next to Leander. She let out a breath she did not realize she held. "He hates everyone. He hissed at my mailman for a solid year." "Wolves understand pack dynamics," Leander replied, bringing the ferret close to his chest. Whiskers crawled right onto the Alpha's broad shoulder, curling around the flannel collar. "He was defending the camp. I respect a good guard duty." Leander bent down, retrieved the dropped silver spoon, and handed the metal prize to the ferret. Whiskers tucked it under his chin, victorious. Tamsin watched the leader of Echo Ridge carry a grumpy ferret back to the campfire. The image shattered her remaining defenses. He offered protection without control. He offered humor instead of dominance. "Dinner is ready," Tamsin said, her voice softer than usual. She returned to the flat rock, handing him a loaded tin plate. The strict business boundaries felt very far away. Chapter 12. The campfire crackled, sending small orange sparks spiraling into the dark night sky. Leander sat on a thick fallen log, balancing the tin plate on his knees. He took a bite of the Caribbean jerk chicken. The intense, flavorful spice hit his palate, followed by the sweet contrast of the honey-glazed potatoes. "This is phenomenal cuisine," Leander said, scraping the plate clean. "Your aunt possesses a dangerous talent with spices." Tamsin sat across the fire on a folding camp stool. The orange light danced across her honey-blonde hair and illuminated the light freckles on her nose. She ate slowly, savoring the meal. "Beatrice rules the front of the house. I command the kitchen," Tamsin explained. She set her empty plate on the dirt. "Together, we build the business." The new commercial space downtown features 6 industrial ovens and a dedicated pastry wing. It changes everything for us. Leander listened, fascinated by the fierce ambition in her hazel eyes. She did not talk about pack ranks or territorial disputes. She talked about creation. She talked about building a legacy from scratch. "The downtown lease requires a towering sum of money to maintain," Leander noted. "The $60,000 only covers the entry. You face a steep climb to keep the doors open." "I survive steep climbs," Tamsin replied, lifting her chin. "I worked out of a cramped garage for 3 years. I saved every dollar. I do not fear hard work, Leander. I fear relying on someone else and watching them tear it down." She looks at me, waiting for me to pull the funding or change the terms of the deal, Leander realized. His chest tightened. Past betrayals left deep scars on her trust. Leander set his plate aside. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. The firelight cast sharp shadows across his rugged jaw and the faded scar on his collarbone. "The money is yours, Tamsin," Leander stated, his voice a steady, unwavering rumble. "I will not ask for a return. I will not demand a percentage of your kitchen. The pack funds sit deep, and investing a premium amount into a brilliant culinary artist benefits the whole town. You build your empire. I just watch." Tamsin stared at him. The defensive posture in her shoulders melted away. She rested her elbows on her knees, leaning closer to the fire, closing the physical distance between them. "You are a terrible business partner," Tamsin whispered. "I told you, I despise pack politics and corporate games," Leander countered, a soft smile breaking across his face. A cool mountain breeze swept through the clearing. Tamsin shivered, pulling the forest green jacket tight. A loose strand of honey blonde hair blew across her cheek, escaping her messy bun. Leander acted on pure instinct. He reached across the open space between them. He did not ask permission, but his movements were slow, offering her plenty of time to pull away. She stayed perfectly still. His calloused fingers brushed against her warm cheek. He tucked the loose strand of hair behind her ear. His thumb traced the edge of her jawline for a fraction of a second. The simple touch ignited a wildfire. Tension skyrocketed in the quiet clearing. The air grew heavy, thick with a sudden, overwhelming chemistry. Tamsin's breath hitched. Her hazel eyes darkened, reflecting the firelight as she stared at his mouth. Leander pulled his hand back, his own pulse roaring in his ears. The urge to close the remaining gap fought against his iron control. He promised her a professional transaction. He promised zero romance. But the feral wolf inside him paced its cage, recognizing a true equal. Captain Whiskers let out a loud snore from Leander's shoulder, breaking the spell. The ferret remained draped around his collar, fast asleep with the silver spoon clamped in his paws. Tamsin blinked, sitting back on her stool. She cleared her throat, a faint flush touching her cheeks. "We have a long hike tomorrow. We should sleep." "Right," Leander agreed, his voice rough and tight. "I take the first watch." He stayed near the fire as Tamsin arranged her sleeping bag. The boundary lines were drawn, but Leander knew the truth. The walls were already crumbling to dust. Chapter 13. Tamsin opened her hazel eyes. The morning air carried a sharp, biting chill that stung her cheeks. The campfire from the previous night sat in the center of the blackened stone ring, reduced to a pile of gray ash. She sat up, the synthetic fabric of her sleeping bag rustling in the quiet dawn. Leander stood near the edge of the clearing. He rolled his broad shoulders, stretching his neck. His dark cargo pants were dry. He wore his heavy steel-toed boots and the thick flannel shirt, looking like a natural part of the rugged landscape. Tamsin unzipped her sleeping bag. She pushed herself to her feet, her sturdy brown hiking boots crunching on the dirt. She rolled the thick sleeping bag into a tight cylinder and secured it to the bottom straps of her floral backpack. "Breakfast," Leander announced. He pointed to the flat rock. 2 plastic containers sat open, offering the leftover cold Caribbean jerk chicken and sweet potatoes. Tamsin walked over. She grabbed a piece of chicken. The spice woke up her senses, burning away the lingering sleep. In her front fleece-lined pocket, Captain Whiskers shifted. The ferret poked his head out, his dark eyes scanning the camp. He held his stolen silver spoon in his front paws, a tiny king clutching a scepter. They ate in comfortable silence, the boundary lines of their strict business deal blurring into genuine camaraderie. They packed the remaining supplies. Tamsin hoisted her floral backpack. Leander grabbed his dark canvas pack. They left the ash-filled fire pit behind and merged back onto the main trail. An hour into the hike, the path took a sharp upward turn. The pine trees grew thicker, their branches tangling together to block the sunlight. Tamsin kept her pace steady. She focused on her breathing. To the left, a sheer rock wall stretched to the horizon. The trail ended abruptly. A colossal pine tree lay across the dirt path. The trunk spanned 4 feet in diameter, a barricade of rough bark and broken branches. To the left, a sheer rock wall stretched upward. To the right, a steep cliff dropped down into a treacherous ravine. Tamsin tapped her right index finger against her thigh. She studied the obstacle, treating it like a logistical kitchen nightmare. "We cannot go around," Tamsin stated. She pressed a hand against the rough bark. "The roots tore out completely, It blocks the entire pass." "We go under," Leander said. He dropped his canvas pack onto the dirt. He stepped up to the colossal trunk. He planted his steel-toed boots wide, securing a firm stance on the loose soil. He bent his knees, wedging his calloused hands under the thickest part of the wood. "I expected him to order me around, but he tackles the hardest work without a single complaint," Tamsin realized, a rush of respect warming her chest. Leander inhaled a sharp breath. He drove his strength upward. The muscles in his back and shoulders strained against the flannel shirt. Veins surfaced on his neck. A low grunt escaped his lips. The colossal pine tree groaned, the wood protesting as Leander hoisted it 3 feet off the ground. "Clear the path!" Leander gritted out. Tamsin moved fast. She dropped to her knees, scrambling into the gap beneath the suspended trunk. She grabbed jagged, broken branches and sharp rocks, tossing them aside to create a smooth crawl space. She worked with frantic efficiency, clearing a wide groove in the dirt. "Done!" Tamsin shouted. She scrambled backward, clearing the drop zone. Leander released his grip. The colossal tree slammed back down, shaking the ground. Dust plumed into the air. He stepped back, wiping his hands on his cargo pants. He looked at the tunnel she cleared, then met her eyes. A bright, genuine smile broke across his rugged face. "Good teamwork, caterer," Leander praised. They pushed their bags through the gap, crawled under the colossal trunk, and continued their journey deeper into the gorge. Chapter 14. The terrain shifted. The soft dirt trail vanished, replaced by jagged gray stones that required careful footing. The steep canyon walls of Echo Gorge closed in on both sides, transforming the open forest into a natural rock corridor. Tamsin walked behind Leander, using his broad shoulders as a guide. The temperature dropped. The air felt heavy. She noticed the birds first. The constant background chatter of mountain sparrows and jays ceased. A profound, unnatural silence blanketed the gorge. Tamsin frowned. She reached up, zipping her forest green jacket closer to her chin. Captain Whiskers retreated deeper into the front pouch, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Leander stopped dead in his tracks. Tamsin almost bumped into his back. He held up a clenched fist, the universal signal to freeze. His spine stiffened, his head tilted, one ear turning toward the wind. "What is it?" Tamsin whispered. Leander did not answer right away. He flared his nostrils, drawing in a long, deep breath. His rugged jaw tightened. His golden eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. A harsh noise broke the silence. It echoed off the canyon walls, a rhythmic, mechanical grinding sound. It sounded like metal chewing through solid stone. The wind shifted, blowing down the corridor. Tamsin tasted it on her tongue. A gritty, dry powder coated the back of her throat. She coughed, bringing a hand to her mouth. A thick cloud of gray mineral dust drifted through the pine trees, settling over the green needles like a layer of toxic snow. "Mineral dust," Leander murmured, his voice a lethal rumble. "They are drilling. The friction is burning the rock and masking their scent. My enforcers are patrolling miles away, and I walked my mate straight into a war zone," Leander thought, a cold spike of dread hitting his stomach. He dropped his dark canvas pack behind a boulder. Tamsin understood the silent command. She slipped her floral backpack off her shoulders, hiding it next to his gear. She kept Whiskers secured in her pouch. Leander crouched low. He moved forward with zero sound, a true apex predator stalking his prey. Tamsin followed his exact path, placing her brown boots exactly where he stepped. They crept up a steep incline, reaching the crest of a rocky ridge. Leander dropped to his stomach. Tamsin mirrored him, pressing her body flat against the cold stone. She peered over the ledge. Below them sat the heart of Echo Gorge. A vast, open cavern entrance yawned into the side of the mountain, the sacred ancestral caves of the Echo Ridge Pack. The clearing in front of the cave looked like an industrial nightmare. 20 men and women swarmed the area. They wore mismatched tactical gear and heavy leather vests. They operated 3 large, gas-powered mining drills, driving the spinning metal bits straight into the ancient stone walls. The noise was deafening. Thick gray dust billowed from the drills, choking the air. The trespassers shouted orders over the mechanical roar, tossing chunks of sacred rock into metal wheelbarrows. Tamsin stared at the desecration. These were not random hikers. These were coordinated rogues. A syndicate, tearing apart pack history for profit. She looked at Leander. The Alpha stared at the cavern, his golden eyes burning with a terrifying, untamed fury. The fun scavenger hunt was over. They stood on the edge of a battlefield. Chapter 15. Tamsin pressed her chest against the cold stone of the ridge. Her hazel eyes scanned the canyon floor below, her mind shifting into a cold, analytical state. She treated the chaotic rogue camp the same way she treated a disastrous wedding kitchen. She mapped the hazards. She tracked the movement of the staff. The rogues possessed 0 discipline. They left their equipment scattered across the dirt. Tamsin noted a pile of discarded mining debris 20 yards to the left of the cave entrance. Rusted steel pipes, thick metal chains, and empty wooden crates sat in a haphazard heap. In the center of the chaos stood the leader. Tamsin recognized the arrogant posture. The man wore a scarred leather vest and dark combat boots. A long, wicked silver blade hung from his belt. "Corbin," Leander whispered, his voice a venomous hiss. Tamsin glanced at the Alpha. "You know him?" "He runs a syndicate of outcasts, poachers. They steal artifacts and sell them to private human buyers. I banished him from this mountain range 5 years ago." Down in the clearing, Corbin raised a hand. The drill operators killed the gas engines. The sudden absence of the mechanical roar left ears ringing. Corbin walked to a metal crate near the cave entrance. He kicked the lid open. 2 rogues reached inside. They pulled out thick, rectangular blocks of industrial explosives connected by bright red and yellow wires. "Rig the main pillars," Corbin ordered, his cruel voice carrying up the ridge. "Blow the entrance wide open. We take the relics and leave the rubble." He is walking into a slaughter to protect a pile of rocks, and the thought makes my chest ache, Tamsin realized, watching Leander's hands curl into fists. Leander pushed himself backward, sliding away from the ledge. He crouched behind a boulder. He turned to Tamsin, his expression harder than granite. He reached out, his calloused hands gripping her shoulders. "You stay here," Leander commanded. He did not use his alpha aura, but his tone left no room for debate. "Keep the ferret in your pouch. Keep your head down. Do not make a sound, no matter what happens down there. I will draw their attention away from this ridge." Tamsin felt a frantic flutter of panic. "There are 20 of them. They have drills and silver blades. Let me cause a distraction." "No." Leander squeezed her shoulders, his thumbs pressing into her forest green jacket. "You are my equal in the city, Tamsin. Out here, you are mortal. Let the monster do his job." He released her. He stood up, unbuttoning the cuffs of his flannel shirt. He did not look back. Tamsin watched him step around the boulder and walk down the steep, rocky path toward the canyon floor. She tapped her right index finger against her thigh, a rapid, nervous rhythm. She looked down at her pouch. Captain Whiskers poked his head out, his dark eyes tracking the Alpha's descent. Tamsin looked back at the pile of rusted steel pipes near the cave entrance. She promised him a professional transaction. She promised 0 romance. But watching him march into a 20-to-1 ambush ignited a fierce protective fire in her veins. She refused to sit on the sidelines. She tracked his movements, waiting for the exact right moment to strike. Chapter 16. Leander stepped off the rocky incline and onto the canyon floor. His steel-toed boots crunched on the gravel. He did not attempt to hide. He walked straight toward the center of the rogue camp, his broad shoulders squared, projecting raw dominance. A rogue carrying a spool of blasting wire spotted him first. The man dropped the wire and shouted in alarm. 20 heads snapped toward the tree line. Weapons cleared leather. Knives, machetes, and silver-laced nets appeared in the hands of the syndicate. Corbin turned around. The rogue leader smiled, a cruel twisting of his scarred face. He rested a hand on the hilt of his silver blade. "Leander!" Corbin called out, his voice dripping with mock respect. "You brought a small welcoming party. Where are your loyal enforcers? Did the big, bad Alpha decide to take a solo hike?" Leander stopped 10 paces away. He stood tall, a lone mountain facing a storm. "Leave this territory, Corbin," Leander warned. His voice carried the physical weight of his Alpha command, an oppressive force that made several younger rogues flinch and step backward. "Take your drills. Leave the explosives. You get 1 chance to walk away with your lives." Corbin laughed. The sound echoed off the ancient stone walls. "Look around, Alpha. You are outnumbered 20-to-1. Your command does not work on my people. We answer to no one. Today, we take the sacred relics, and we leave your head on a pike." Corbin drew his silver blade. He pointed the weapon at Leander's chest. "Kill him." The rogues surged forward. Leander did not reach for a weapon. He closed his eyes and embraced the feral beast waiting beneath his skin. He triggered the shift. The change hit with brutal, violent speed. The familiar sting of breaking bone washed over him. His spine arched forward, lengthening and snapping into a new configuration. His tailored cargo pants shredded. The thick flannel shirt ripped into ribbons as raw muscle mass expanded. Thick, dark fur erupted across his skin. "I will turn this canyon into a graveyard before I let them touch her," Leander vowed, his human consciousness locking into perfect sync with his wolf half. He hit the dirt on 4 paws. He was a towering, colossal nightmare of muscle and fang, standing taller than a draft horse. His golden eyes burned with lethal intent. A roar tore from his throat, a sound so loud it shook the loose gravel on the ground. The first rogue lunged with a machete. Leander swiped a massive furred paw. The strike hit the rogue's chest, launching the man 10 feet through the air. He crashed into a metal wheelbarrow and did not get up. A second attacker swung a heavy chain. Leander ducked the blow. His jaws snapped shut around the rogue's forearm, the crushing pressure shattering the bone instantly. He tossed the attacker aside like a broken toy. The syndicate swarmed him. Leander became a blur of dark fur and brutal violence. He used his colossal size to dominate the space. He threw enemies into the rock walls, his claws tearing through leather vests. He fought with controlled, terrifying precision, keeping the mob focused entirely on him and away from the ridge where his mate hid. Corbin watched from the cave entrance, his face pale. He shouted orders, trying to coordinate the attack. The rogues formed a circle, drawing silver-laced nets from their belts, preparing to trap the raging Alpha in a deadly snare. The fight shifted from a brawl to a calculated takedown. Chapter 17. Tamsin pressed her stomach flat against the cold, jagged stone of the ridge. The gray mineral dust coated her tongue, carrying a bitter, dry taste. Below her, the Echo Gorge canyon floor resembled a disastrous kitchen during the peak rush of a 500-guest wedding. Instead of burning entrees and shattered plates, she watched flying bodies and snapping jaws. Leander dominated the center of the rogue camp. In his towering, dark-furred wolf form, he moved with terrifying fluid speed. His heavy paws gouged deep trenches into the dirt as he pivoted. He caught a swinging machete with a furred forearm, the steel blade bouncing harmlessly off his thick hide. He grabbed the attacker by the leather vest and hurled the man into an empty wooden crate. The wood splintered into 100 jagged pieces upon impact. Despite Leander's raw power, the syndicate possessed overwhelming numbers. Corbin stood near the silent, gas-powered drills, waving a scarred hand to direct traffic. "Circle him!" Corbin shouted, his cruel voice echoing off the ancient rock walls. "Bring out the silver!" 4 rogues broke away from the main brawl. They sprinted toward the metal wheelbarrows parked near the cave entrance. They reached inside and pulled out wide, heavy nets woven with shimmering silver threads. Tamsin knew the local lore. Silver burned lycanthropes on contact. It poisoned their blood. If those nets trapped him, the fight would end in seconds. Tamsin's survival instinct screamed at her to stay flat against the rock. Leander gave her a direct order. "Stay put. Do not make a sound." She built her catering business by mitigating risks and following strict safety procedures. Running into a mob of armed poachers violated every rule of self-preservation she owned. "I built a successful company from scratch, and I refuse to let amateur thugs butcher the only man who respects my independence," Tamsin decided, her heart hammering a wild, frantic rhythm against her ribs. She shimmied backward, sliding her torso away from the ledge. She kept her head down, crawling over the loose gravel until she reached the large boulder where they hid their bags. She unzipped her forest green jacket. She reached into the fleece-lined pouch and pulled Captain Whiskers out into the cold air. The ferret clutched his stolen silver spoon, his nose twitching at the sharp scent of the mineral dust. Tamsin unclipped the collapsible, soft-mesh floral pet carrier from the straps of her backpack. She popped the fabric tent open, ensuring the structural wires locked into place, and set the grumpy ferret inside. "Stay here, Captain," Tamsin whispered, zipping the mesh door shut. "Guard the gear. I have to go fix a scheduling error on the floor." The ferret let out a low, continuous chitter, settling into the back corner of the soft carrier. He tapped his spoon against the mesh, accepting the guard duty. Tamsin stood up. She wiped the gray dust from the knees of her thick denim jeans. She ignored the trembling in her hands. She turned her back on the safe hiding spot and moved toward the steep, rocky path leading down to the canyon floor. The descent tested her balance. The narrow trail consisted of loose stones and slippery patches of dry moss. Tamsin placed her sturdy brown hiking boots with calculated precision. One wrong step meant tumbling down the rock face and alerting the entire syndicate to her presence. She kept her back pressed against the canyon wall, using her hands to steady her weight. The noise of the battle masked her approach. The sounds of snarling, shouting, and breaking wood drowned out the crunch of her boots. Tamsin reached the bottom of the trail, slipping behind a towering stalagmite near the edge of the clearing. She peered around the rock formation, her hazel eyes scanning the chaotic battlefield to locate her target. Chapter 18. Tamsin hugged the shadows of the canyon wall, mapping the battlefield. The fight in the center of the clearing took a dark turn. The rogues abandoned their close combat weapons. They switched to coordinated trap tactics. 3 muscular poachers grabbed thick, rusted metal chains from the dirt. They fanned out, swinging the heavy links in wide arcs. They launched the chains simultaneously, the heavy iron wrapped over Leander's dark-furred back, tangling around his front legs. The three rogues dug their combat boots into the gravel, pulling the chains taut. Leander roared. The sound vibrated in Tamsin's chest, a primal noise of fury and frustration. He fought the hold, his powerful shoulder muscles straining against the iron links. He dragged the three men forward a full yard, but the combined weight slowed his movements. Corbin signaled a fourth rogue. The man stepped out from behind a silent drill, gripping the edge of a shimmering, silver-laced net. He approached the Alpha's blind spot, raising the net to cast it over Leander's head. Tamsin locked her eyes on her destination. 20 yards to the left of the cave entrance sat the haphazard pile of discarded mining debris she noted from the ridge. She took a sharp breath and broke from the shadows. She sprinted across the outer edge of the clearing. The gray mineral dust puffed around her brown boots. She ducked behind a tipped-over wheelbarrow, avoiding the sightline of a rogue recovering from a throw. She pushed off the ground, closing the remaining distance to the debris pile. She dropped to her knees beside the rusted metal. Tamsin evaluated the tools the same way she selected a blade from her battered leather chef's knife roll. She bypassed the thin, fragile rods and ignored a piece of heavy machinery she could not lift. Her fingers closed around a solid, rusted steel pipe. It spanned 3 feet long, carrying a comforting, balanced weight. If I miss this swing, the pack loses a leader, and I lose the best business partner I ever met, Tamsin thought, wrapping both hands tightly around the rough metal grip. She stood up, hefting the steel pipe over her right shoulder like a baseball bat. The rust flaked against her palm, scratching her skin. She ignored the sting. She stepped away from the debris pile and charged straight toward the center of the fight. The rogue with the silver net stood 10 feet away. He focused entirely on the struggling wolf, completely unaware of the human woman sprinting up behind him. Tamsin closed the gap. The shouting and the clanking of the chains covered the sound of her approaching footsteps. She planted her left boot, rotating her hips to generate maximum torque. She pulled her arms back, aiming for the lowest point of the rogue's stance. She did not hesitate. She did not second-guess her aim. She swung the rusted steel pipe with every ounce of strength in her body. Chapter 19. The rusted steel pipe cut through the dusty air. Tamsin's swing connected directly with the back of the rogue's right knee. A loud, sickening crack echoed over the noise of the struggle. The poacher shrieked, his leg buckling instantly under the blunt force. He collapsed into the dirt. The shimmering, silver-laced net slipped from his grasp, tumbling uselessly onto the gravel out of reach. Leander felt the sudden absence of the looming threat. The Alpha capitalized on the distraction. He threw his colossal weight forward, snapping the iron chains holding him back. The sheer force launched the 3 anchoring rogues into the air. They crashed into the dirt, groaning in pain. Tamsin stepped back, her chest heaving. She lowered the steel pipe, ready to swing again. "Kill the human!" a voice roared. Tamsin turned her head. Corbin stood near the cave entrance, his scarred face twisted in absolute fury. He realized a mere caterer ruined his tactical trap. The rogue leader charged across the clearing, his silver blade glinting in the dim canyon light. He closed the distance with terrifying speed, moving far faster than a normal man. Tamsin raised the rusted pipe, bracing for the impact. She prepared to block the blade. Corbin did not swing the knife. He lowered his shoulder and slammed his body weight straight into Tamsin's chest. The force lifted her boots off the ground. She flew backward, the rusted pipe flying from her hands. She crashed hard against the jagged gray rock of the canyon wall. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. She slid down the rough stone, hitting the dirt floor on her knees. A sharp, burning pain flared along her left arm. Tamsin gasped, looking down. The jagged rocks sliced right through the fabric of her warm forest green jacket. A deep, nasty gash ran along her forearm. Bright crimson blood welled to the surface, dripping onto the dusty gravel. He told me to stay put, but a good kitchen manager always steps in when the line cooks are overwhelmed, Tamsin reasoned, clutching her bleeding arm to stem the flow. Corbin loomed over her. He flipped his silver blade in his hand, pointing the sharp tip toward her throat. He smiled, a cold, empty expression. Tamsin refused to close her eyes. She stared up at the rogue leader, her jaw locked in defiance. She survived a ruined business. She refused to cower before a thief. Before Corbin could thrust the blade, the atmosphere in the canyon shattered. A shadow blotted out the dim light. The ground trembled beneath Tamsin's boots. She looked past Corbin's shoulder and watched a nightmare unfold. Chapter 20. The metallic tang of human blood hit the stagnant canyon air. It cut through the thick clouds of gray mineral dust and the stench of sweat. Leander froze. His golden eyes snapped toward the canyon wall. He saw Tamsin kneeling in the dirt, clutching her bleeding arm. He saw the torn fabric of her forest green jacket. He saw Corbin standing over her with a silver blade. The Alpha snapped. The legendary ironclad control he fought so hard to maintain vanished in a single heartbeat. Leander did not just shift tactics. He became pure, brutal violence. He abandoned all defensive maneuvers. The feral beast seized total command of his mind. A deafening, bone-rattling roar tore from his throat, shaking the stalagmites hanging from the cavern ceiling. He launched himself across the clearing. A rogue stepped into his path, swinging a machete. Leander did not dodge. He slammed into the man, crushing the poacher under his colossal paws and tossing him aside like a rag doll. Another attacker rushed his flank. Leander swiped a heavy, furred paw, sending the man crashing into the side of a gas-powered drill. The remaining members of the syndicate backed away in pure terror. They dropped their chains and nets, scrambling for the tree line. The fight morphed into a desperate retreat. Corbin heard the approaching thunder of the Alpha's charge. The rogue leader spun around, his face draining of color. He abandoned his attack on Tamsin. He raised his silver blade, preparing to make a final, desperate stand against the charging monster. He bent his knees, angling the poisoned metal toward Leander's chest. Leander did not slow down. He prepared to take the silver burn, willing to endure the agony if it meant tearing Corbin apart. Before Corbin could thrust the blade, a piercing sound ripped through the gorge. A loud, echoing howl cascaded down the rock walls. It was followed by a second, then a third. The calls intertwined, carrying a promise of immediate, lethal backup. Jason Ryland burst through the tree line at the edge of the clearing. The Beta and Gamma shifted mid-stride, their human forms melting into sleek, deadly wolves. Behind them, a dozen members of the Echo Ridge Enforcer Unit flooded the canyon floor. The cavalry heard the Alphas roar from the perimeter, and they arrived ready for war. Corbin hesitated, glancing at the overwhelming numbers rushing his flank. That single second of hesitation cost him the battle. Leander slammed into the rogue leader. The impact sent the silver blade flying into the dark recesses of the cave. Leander pinned Corbin to the dirt, his massive jaws snapping inches from the rogue's face, ending the rebellion in an instant. Chapter 21. The Echo Gorge canyon floor erupted into organized chaos. The wild, chaotic brawl transformed into a precise military operation the second the Enforcer unit arrived. A dozen sleek, deadly wolves flooded the clearing. They did not attack with blind rage. They moved in coordinated pairs. Jason Ryland led the charge, their fur bristling along their spines. They targeted the fleeing syndicate members, cutting off the escape routes leading into the dense pine forest. Tamsin knelt in the dirt, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I survived a ruined business contract. I will not bleed out in the dirt over stolen artifacts, Tamsin told herself, clamping her right hand over her torn left sleeve to stem the blood flow. She watched the takedown. Jace sprinted past the silent, gas-powered drills. He lunged, driving his heavy shoulder into a rogue attempting to climb the rock wall. The poacher crashed back down to the gravel, the wind knocked from his lungs. Ryland flanked another pair of attackers, snapping his jaws to herd them toward the center of the clearing where the rest of the enforcers waited. The rogue syndicate realized the fight was lost. Weapons clattered to the stones. Men and women dropped to their knees, raising their hands in surrender. In the center of the battlefield, Alpha Leander maintained his dominance. The colossal, dark-furred wolf kept Corbin pinned flat against the earth. Leander's heavy paws rested on the rogue leader's chest, the sharp claws pressing through the scarred leather vest. Corbin did not move. His silver blade lay lost in the dark shadows of the cave, and his face displayed pure, unadulterated terror. Jace trotted toward the Alpha. The beta wolf blurred, his bones shifting and reforming in a fluid motion. Within seconds, Jace stood in his human form. He wore his dark tactical gear, having stripped it off before shifting on the perimeter. He carried a heavy canvas duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Standard protocol for perimeter patrols. Jace reached into the duffel bag and pulled out a thick coil of silver chain. Corbin thrashed, trying to escape the metal, but Leander pressed down harder. Jace knelt in the dirt. He wrapped the silver links around Corbin's wrists, securing the bindings tight. A sharp hiss echoed through the air. The toxic metal burned the lycanthrope's skin on contact, leaving thick, red welts. Corbin gritted his teeth, a groan escaping his throat as the silver neutralized his strength. "The perimeter is secure, Alpha," Jace reported, standing up. "We captured 15. The rest fled, but our trackers are already hunting them down." Leander let out a low rumble of acknowledgement. He stepped off the bound rogue leader. The Alpha turned his massive head toward the canyon wall, his golden eyes locking onto Tamsin. He saw her kneeling in the gray mineral dust. He saw the crimson blood soaking her forest green jacket. A dark, dangerous growl rattled in his chest. He took a step toward her, but stopped. He remembered his current state. He possessed 0 human clothes. Jace understood the hesitation. The beta reached into the canvas duffel bag again. He retrieved a spare pair of dark gray sweatpants and tossed them onto the gravel near the cave entrance. Leander grabbed the fabric in his teeth. He trotted behind a towering stalagmite, hiding his colossal form from view. The sickening sound of snapping bones echoed across the quiet clearing. A minute later, Leander stepped out from behind the rock. He walked barefoot across the sharp gravel, wearing only the gray sweatpants. Scratches and bruises covered his broad chest, but his focus remained locked on the human woman. He crossed the battlefield, ignoring his enforcers, and dropped to his knees right beside Tamsin. Chapter 22. The scent of fresh blood and dry mineral dust hung heavy in the cold mountain air. Leander knelt in the gravel, his bare knees grinding against the sharp stones. He reached out, his calloused hands hovering over Tamsin's torn forest green jacket. He wanted to pull her into his chest, but he feared causing more pain to her bleeding arm. "I have you," Leander promised, his voice a low, rough rumble. He inspected the deep gash running along her forearm. The jagged rock wall sliced clean through the fabric and the skin. 2 pack healers sprinted across the clearing. The older man and young woman wore thick wool coats, carrying heavy white canvas medical bags marked with a red crescent. They navigated the surrendered rogues and the scattered mining debris, rushing straight toward their Alpha. "Alpha Leander," the older healer said, dropping his bag onto the dirt. "You sustained multiple lacerations from the machetes. Let me tend to your chest." "No," Leander commanded. He pointed a long finger at Tamsin. "Fix her arm, right now." The healers did not argue. The young woman knelt beside Tamsin. She unlatched the canvas medic bag, pulling out a pair of trauma shears. "I need to expose the wound," the healer stated, looking Tamsin in the eye. Tamsin gave a sharp nod. She unzipped the front of her jacket, allowing the healer to cut the ruined left sleeve. The cold wind bit into Tamsin's bare skin, but she did not shiver. The healer pulled a bottle of clear, modern antiseptic from the bag. She poured the liquid over a sterile gauze pad and pressed it directly into the open gash. Tamsin inhaled a sharp, hissing breath. Her jaw locked tight. She began tapping her right index finger in a rapid, frantic rhythm against her denim thigh. She refused to cry out. She treated the severe wound the same way she handled the nasty burn from a commercial oven, with sheer, stubborn willpower. She stood her ground against monsters. She is my true equal, Leander realized, watching her endure the stinging pain without a single complaint. The healer threaded a curved suturing needle. She worked with practiced, efficient speed, pulling the edges of the jagged cut together. Tamsin stared straight ahead, refusing to look at the blood. Leander shifted his weight. He reached out and grabbed Tamsin's tapping right hand, folding her small fingers into his large palm. He offered a silent anchor. Tamsin squeezed his hand tight, grounding herself in his solid presence. 10 stitches, the young healer announced, snipping the final thread. She wrapped a thick white bandage around Tamsin's forearm, securing it with medical tape. "Keep the dressing dry. The pain will peak in an hour." While Tamsin received the bandage, the older healer turned to Leander. The man opened a small glass jar filled with a thick, dark green paste. The strong aroma of crushed mint and damp earth drifted upward. The healer applied the traditional plant salve to the shallow cuts on Leander's chest and shoulders. The herbal medicine carried an immediate cooling effect, jump-starting the wolf's natural healing factor. "The bleeding is stopped," the older healer confirmed, stepping back. Leander looked down at Tamsin. Her face appeared pale beneath the layer of gray dust. He ran a thumb over her knuckles, the anger inside him fading into a deep, hollow exhaustion. He survived the ambush, but the sight of her blood stained his victory. Chapter 23. The Echo Ridge enforcers worked with brutal efficiency. Jace hauled Corbin to his feet, ignoring the rogue leader's groans of pain. The silver chains hissed, burning a permanent reminder into the poacher's wrists. The enforcers dragged the remaining syndicate members toward the main trail, marching them back to town for a harsh interrogation. Tamsin remained on the ground, leaning her good shoulder against the rock wall. The sharp, stinging pain in her left arm transitioned into a deep, heavy ache. Jace stopped near the Alpha. "There is a secure pack outpost cabin half a mile up the eastern ridge. It holds firewood, clean water, and a secure door. Take the human there to rest. We will handle the cleanup and the prisoners." Leander nodded. He stood up, his bare chest smeared with the green healing salve. He offered his hand to Tamsin. She gripped his palm, allowing him to pull her to her feet. Her legs felt unsteady, the adrenaline draining from her system and leaving her muscles feeling like lead. Rylan jogged down the rocky path from the ridge. The Gamma carried the heavy floral backpack, the dark canvas pack, and the collapsible soft mesh pet carrier. He handed the gear over to Leander. A loud, angry chitter erupted from the mesh tent. Captain Whiskers paced in circles, demanding release. Tamsin offered a tired smile, relieved to hear her grumpy companion. Leander slung all 3 bags over his right shoulder. He did not offer to carry Tamsin, knowing she valued her independence, but he stayed close to her left side. They left the dusty, blood-stained canyon floor behind and began the slow walk up the eastern ridge. The hike took 20 minutes. The dense pine trees thinned out, revealing a sturdy log cabin built flush against the mountain wall. The structure looked rustic but solid, featuring a heavy timber door and thick glass windows. Leander pushed the door open. The interior held a single, large room. Dust motes danced in the fading afternoon light. A large bed sat in the corner, covered in thick woolen blankets. A cast-iron sink rested against the far wall, flanked by a stack of chopped logs and an unlit wood-burning stove. Tamsin walked to the center of the room. She dropped onto a wooden chair near a small dining table. Leander set the bags on the floor. He unzipped the soft mesh carrier. Captain Whiskers scrambled out, his dark eyes scanning the new environment. The ferret clutched his stolen silver spoon tight in his front paws. He scurried under the wooden bed, claiming the dark space as his new fortress. The silence of the cabin settled over them. Tamsin rested her bandaged arm on the table. The reality of the afternoon crashed down on her shoulders. She faced an army of wolves. She shattered a man's knee with a steel pipe. I spent my whole life building walls to keep out chaos, but I just risked my life for a man I met yesterday, Tamsin thought, letting the quiet safety of the room wrap around her. She watched Leander walk to the cast-iron sink. He moved with a slow, heavy grace, the battle taking a toll even on his formidable strength. They survived the wilderness trek, but the distance between them evaporated completely. The strict, professional business deal they agreed upon felt like a distant memory, replaced by a profound, undeniable bond. Chapter 24. Cold mountain water rushed from the brass tap, splashing against the basin of the cast-iron sink. Leander stood in the corner of the cabin, the chill of the room biting at his bare chest. He grabbed a clean white cotton cloth from a stack near the basin. He held the fabric under the running water, wringing out the excess moisture. He turned the tap off. The sudden silence in the cabin felt heavy, thick with unspoken words. Leander walked back to the wooden table. Tamsin sat slumped in the chair. A thick layer of gray mineral dust coated her honey-blonde hair, dulling the vibrant color. Dried blood stained her chin and neck. She looked battered, exhausted, and incredibly beautiful. Leander pulled a second wooden chair close. He sat down, positioning himself directly in front of her. He held up the damp white cloth. "Let me," Leander requested, his voice a soft, low rumble. Tamsin did not argue. She tilted her chin up, exposing her face to the fading daylight pouring through the window. Leander moved with extreme caution. His hands were huge, scarred from years of territorial battles, but his touch remained feather-light. He pressed the cool, damp cloth against her cheek. He wiped away the gray dust, tracing the line of her jaw. He moved to her forehead, carefully cleaning the dirt near her hairline. The cool water offered a soothing contrast to her warm skin. He rinsed the cloth in a metal bowl on the table and returned to his task. He wiped the dried blood from her chin, his thumb brushing against her lower lip. I dragged a brilliant culinary artist into a war zone, and I do not deserve the quiet forgiveness shining in her eyes, Leander thought, a heavy knot of guilt tightening in his chest. "I am sorry," Leander whispered, breaking the silence. He dropped the dirty cloth onto the table. He rested his forearms on his knees, leaning closer to her. The tough, untouchable alpha facade shattered, leaving only a man burdened by his own failure. I promised your aunt I would shield you from the wind itself. I promised a professional hike. Instead, you bled for my pack. Tamsin opened her hazel eyes. She studied his face, reading the deep remorse etched into his rugged features. She did not offer a polite dismissal. She craved accountability, and he sat before her, claiming total responsibility. She reached out with her uninjured right hand. She grabbed his thick wrist, stopping his retreat. You did not force me down the mountain, Leander, Tamsin stated, her voice steady and clear. You gave me a direct order to stay hidden on the ridge. I ignored it. I chose to pick up the steel pipe. I chose to swing it. You should not have been in that position, Leander argued, his jaw clenching. Corbin almost killed you. But he failed, Tamsin countered. She leaned forward, invading his personal space. The distance between them vanished, reducing the world to the quiet corner of the cabin. I am not a victim to be pitied. I am a partner who provided backup when the line got overwhelmed. Do not apologize to me for surviving a fight we won together. The raw, fierce determination in her words knocked the air from his chest. She did not view him as a monster or a failure. She viewed him as an equal. Leander turned his hand, linking his fingers through hers. The lingering tension in his shoulders finally released. He looked at her mouth, the undeniable chemistry between them flaring to life, burning away the cold of the mountain cabin. Chapter 25. The cold mountain air seeped through the thick glass windows of the Eastern Ridge outpost cabin. Leander stepped away from the wooden table. He walked barefoot across the floorboards toward the unlit wood-burning stove in the corner. His broad chest still bore the dark green healing salve, the sharp scent of crushed mint and damp earth filling the small room. He crouched beside the stack of chopped logs. He grabbed 3 thick pieces of dry timber and arranged them inside the cast-iron belly of the stove. He struck a match against the rough stone hearth. A bright orange flame flared to life, catching the dry bark. Within seconds, a warm, crackling fire pushed the chill out of the cabin. Tamsin watched him from the table. She rested her bandaged left arm on the smooth wood. Her forest green jacket hung lopsided, the left sleeve severed at the shoulder by the pack healers. The throbbing pain in her forearm dulled, replaced by a steady, quiet exhaustion. Leander closed the iron grate. He turned around, the firelight casting long shadows across his borrowed gray sweatpants and bare torso. He looked rugged, wild, and hesitant. The fierce alpha who tore through a rogue syndicate now stood in the corner, giving her space. I spent my life avoiding the fire to keep from getting burned. But this wolf is the only warmth I will ever need, Tamsin realized, the last of her defensive walls crumbling to dust. She stood up. Her sturdy brown hiking boots made soft thuds against the floorboards. She crossed the room, stopping inches from his chest. She looked up, her hazel eyes locking onto his striking golden gaze. The professional business transaction is officially void, Tamsin stated, her voice clear and unwavering. Leander's breath hitched. A dark, intense hunger flared in his eyes, but he kept his hands at his sides. I told you I wanted an equal partner. I do not take what is not freely given. Tamsin reached up with her uninjured right hand. She curled her fingers around the back of his neck, burying her hand in his thick, unruly dark hair. She pulled him down. Leander did not hesitate any longer. He closed the gap, capturing her lips in a fierce, intoxicating kiss. The chemistry between them ignited like dry kindling. Tamsin gasped, opening her mouth to the demanding pressure. Leander wrapped his strong arms around her waist, mindful of her bandaged arm, and lifted her off the floor. He carried her to the large wooden bed in the corner. He set her down on the thick woolen blankets with gentle, deliberate care. The mattress dipped under his weight as he joined her. Underneath the bed frame, Captain Whiskers let out a soft chitter. The ferret clutched his stolen silver spoon, guarding his territory, oblivious to the shifting dynamic above him. Tamsin pulled Leander closer. She mapped the hard planes of his shoulders, her fingers tracing the jagged, faded scar on his collarbone. She avoided the fresh scratches coated in green salve. Leander kissed her jaw, his lips trailing a hot path down her neck. He pushed the ruined forest green jacket off her right shoulder, discarding the torn garment onto the floor. "You are radiant," Leander murmured, his voice a rough vibration against her collarbone. Tamsin laughed, a breathless sound that echoed in the quiet cabin. "I am covered in gray mineral dust and smelling of campfire smoke." "You smell like victory," Leander corrected. He brushed a loose honey-blonde curl from her forehead, his touch reverent. They surrendered to the undeniable pull of the mating bond. Tamsin let go of her past fears, her strict demands for rigid contracts melting away under his heated touch. The cabin filled with the sounds of shifting blankets and quiet sighs. Leander worshipped every inch of her skin, proving his fierce loyalty through gentle devotion. He worshipped her strength, matching her vibrant energy with his own raw passion. For the first time in years, Tamsin did not feel lonely. She found her exact missing piece in the heart of a chaotic wilderness. They spent the night wrapped in the woolen blankets, the wood stove burning bright, transforming a forced scavenger hunt into the start of a genuine, unbreakable partnership. Chapter 26. The morning sun broke over the mountain ridge, pouring bright light through the cabin windows. Tamsin woke up wrapped in the woolen blankets, resting against Leander's solid chest. Her bandaged left arm felt stiff, but the sharp pain was gone. They dressed in the quiet dawn. Tamsin pulled on her thick denim jeans and her sturdy brown boots. She folded her torn forest green jacket, tucking it into her heavy floral backpack. Leander slipped into his borrowed gray sweatpants. The scratches on his chest were sealed tight, the natural healing factor of his wolf blood finishing the job the green salve started. Rylan had delivered the bags, but Leander carried the load. He slung the dark canvas pack and the floral backpack over his right shoulder. Tamsin picked up the soft mesh pet carrier. Captain Whiskers sat inside, wide awake and clutching his silver spoon. The hike down to the Echo Gorge trailhead took an hour. The crisp air cleared the last remnants of exhaustion from Tamsin's mind. They found the sapphire blue pickup truck parked exactly where Leander left it. Leander opened the passenger door for Tamsin. He tossed the bags into the truck bed. Reaching behind the driver's seat, he found a spare white cotton t-shirt and pulled it over his head. The shirt stretched tight across his broad shoulders, but it provided enough decency for the drive into town. Leander drove the pickup down the winding mountain roads. They reached Tamsin's gravel driveway 20 minutes later. Her sleek, metallic plum SUV sat undisturbed near the porch. Standing on the wooden porch steps was Aunt Beatrice. Mateo and Lily flanked the older woman. Beatrice held her heavy wooden stirring spoon. She pointed the rounded tip toward the truck as Leander parked. The front door of the house remained open, signaling an incoming storm. Leander turned the engine off. "I will handle this." "We handle this together," Tamsin corrected. She grabbed the pet carrier and pushed her door open. They walked up the driveway. Beatrice narrowed her eyes, scanning Tamsin from head to toe. The aunt's gaze locked onto the thick white bandage wrapped around Tamsin's left forearm. "You broke your promise, Wolf," Beatrice stated, her voice sharp enough to slice glass. "You said she would return exactly as she left. I see a missing sleeve and fresh blood." I expected a battle with her family, but her aunt wields a wooden spoon with the authority of a gamma, Leander noted, stopping at the base of the stairs. "I failed to protect her," Leander admitted, keeping his posture respectful. He did not pull rank. "A rogue syndicate ambushed us. I take full responsibility for the danger." Mateo clutched a kitchen clipboard to his chest, his eyes wide. "A syndicate? Assassins? We bake tartlets. We are not equipped for gang warfare." "Calm down, Mateo," Tamsin ordered. She stepped up to her aunt, gently lowering the wooden spoon. "Leander did not hurt me. I grabbed a rusted steel pipe and shattered a poacher's knee. The rock wall cut my arm. It took 10 stitches, and I feel fine." Lily gasped, a bright smile breaking across her face. "You beat up a poacher? That is spectacular for our brand image." Beatrice ignored the prep worker. She looked at Tamsin's face, searching for fear or regret. She found none. She saw the confident posture. She saw the way Leander hovered close, offering a steady, protective shield without smothering her niece. The undeniable, crackling chemistry between the Alpha and the caterer radiated in the morning air. Beatrice let out a long sigh. She tucked the wooden spoon into her apron pocket. 10 stitches, Beatrice repeated. She looked at Leander, offering a stern nod of approval. "You brought her back brave. I suppose that counts. Come inside. The kitchen lease paperwork arrived in the mail yesterday. We have a $60,000 empire to build." Tamsin smiled, leaning her good shoulder against Leander's side. The real work was just beginning. Chapter 27. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of flour, signed contracts, and endless renovations. The grand opening of Tamsin's luxurious commercial kitchen hit the downtown district like a hurricane. The $60,000 lease provided a sprawling, immaculate space. Pristine white marble counters gleamed under bright industrial lights. 6 massive convection ovens hummed against the back wall, radiating a comforting heat. The front reception area overflowed with clients. Humans and wolves mingled, shouting orders over the loud, rhythmic thumping of pop music. Tamsin stood at the central prep station, commanding her crew. She wore a pristine white chef's coat, the long sleeves hiding the faint, pale scar on her left forearm. Her honey blonde hair sat in a tight, professional bun. "Mateo, the smoked salmon crostini needs more dill," Tamsin called out, plating a dozen delicate appetizers with rapid precision. Mateo paced near the walk-in refrigerator, hyperventilating. He clutched his trusty clipboard, reviewing the order tickets. "We are drowning. The Echo Ridge pack ordered 40 dozen basil ricotta tartlets. The oven capacity is redlining. We will perish in a sea of cheese." "The ovens are fine," Lily chirped, pulling a fresh tray of golden pastries from the heat. She remained a beacon of bubbly calm in the storm. Tamsin tapped her right index finger against the marble counter, assessing the bottleneck. The dish pit in the corner resembled a mountain of dirty stainless steel. They lacked a dedicated dishwasher for the afternoon shift, pots and pans piled high, threatening to stall the prep line. The heavy kitchen doors swung open. Alpha Leander walked into the chaos. He wore a dark Henley shirt and black denim jeans. The intimidating leader of Echo Ridge ignored the frantic staff and walked straight toward Tamsin. A warm, brilliant smile touched his rugged jaw. "The front lobby is packed," Leander said, leaning against the counter. "Your aunt is threatening a customer with a spoon for cutting the line." "Standard operating procedure," Tamsin replied, wiping her hands on a side towel. She looked at the overflowing dish pit and sighed. "We are short-staffed in the wash zone. I have to step off a line to scrub pans." He leads an entire society of predators, yet he scrubs burnt caramel off my roasting pans without a single complaint, Tamsin thought as Leander shook his head. "You stay on the line," Leander instructed. He walked past the central station. He reached the dish pit, grabbed a heavy rubber apron from a hook, and pulled it over his dark Henley. He rolled up his sleeves, exposing his thick, muscular forearms. He turned the hot water tap on full blast, grabbed a scouring pad, and attacked the dirty roasting pans. Mateo stopped pacing. He dropped his clipboard onto a flour-dusted counter. The high-strung sous chef stared at the towering, terrifying Alpha washing dishes. "The pack leader is doing our dishes," Mateo whispered, his voice trembling. "Is this a trap? Do we pay him in meat?" "We pay him in respect, Mateo," Tamsin corrected, hiding a wide grin. "Grab the next tray of tartlets!" Leander scrubbed the pans with the same raw power he used to fight rogues. He cleared the sink in 10 minutes, moving with focused efficiency. He did not issue orders. He did not exert his alpha aura. He simply supported the woman he loved. Tamsin plated the last crostini. She walked over to the dish pit, holding a fresh pastry. Leander turned off the tap, shaking the suds from his hands. Tamsin fed him a bite of the warm tartlet. "Perfect balance," Leander praised, chewing the pastry. "I learned how to mix the right ingredients," Tamsin said, her hazel eyes locking onto his golden gaze. She leaned up, kissing his cheek, surrounded by the beautiful chaos of her thriving empire. Chapter 28. The main hall of the Echo Ridge Lodge glowed under the warm light of crystal chandeliers. The annual pack banquet drew hundreds of wolves. Unlike the disastrous Lunar Summit opening 3 months prior, the atmosphere buzzed with lively conversation and joyous laughter. Tamsin stood near the dessert station, admiring her flawless work. Her catering business executed the 5-course menu with military precision. She traded her chef's coat for a stunning, tailored sapphire gown that mirrored the paint of Leander's pickup truck. The silk fabric draped perfectly over her curves, leaving her scarred left arm bare and proud. On the far side of the room, Mateo and Lily managed the buffet line, functioning without a single panic attack. Aunt Beatrice guarded the VIP tables, her wooden spoon replaced by a crystal champagne flute. A sharp chime rang through the hall. The chatter died down. Leander stepped up to the wooden podium on the main stage. He wore a sharp, tailored black suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. The faded scar on his collarbone remained hidden beneath a crisp white collar. He surveyed the crowd. His golden eyes swept over the pack, projecting steady, fair leadership. He did not need to use his heavy alpha command to gain their attention. The wolves respected him. He looked toward the dessert station. Tamsin offered a subtle, encouraging nod. The air shifted, carrying her scent straight to the podium, sweet almond and fresh rain. The fragrance settled into his chest, calming the restless wolf beneath his skin. 3 months ago, I stood on this exact stage, Leander began, his deep rumble reaching every corner of the room. A tray of pastries fell to the floor, and my rigid world shattered. A ripple of amused laughter washed through the crowd. Tamsin flushed, tapping her finger against her silk skirt. "A pack survives on strength," Leander continued, his tone turning sincere. "But it thrives on partnership. We faced an ambush in Echo Gorge. We defended our sacred history. We learned that true power does not come from dominance. It comes from trusting the person standing beside you in the dirt. She brought chaos to my rigid world, and I refuse to live a single day without it, Leander thought, his gaze anchored on Tamsin. Tamsin felt a familiar weight near her ankles. She looked down. Captain Whiskers slipped out of her small evening clutch. The dramatic ferret wore a tiny, custom-made black bow tie. He ignored Tamsin's warning hiss. The ferret scurried across the hardwood floor, darting between the legs of the seated wolves, making a direct line for the stage. Leander opened his mouth to finish his toast. Captain Whiskers scrambled up the wooden side of the podium. The ferret popped his head over the ledge. He locked his dark eyes onto the shiny silver microphone stand. Before Leander could react, Whiskers lunged. The ferret clamped his tiny paws around the silver microphone, yanking it sideways with surprising force. The microphone popped out of the clip. Aloud, Leander stared at the empty stand. Leander stared at the empty stand. He looked at Tamsin. Tamsin pressed a hand to her mouth, her shoulders shaking with silent, uncontrollable laughter. Leander did not roar. He did not issue an alpha command. He threw his head back and joined her laughter, the rich, booming sound filling the hall. The fierce, terrifying leader of Echo Ridge abandoned the podium. He walked down the stage stairs, crossing the room until he reached Tamsin. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her flush against his suit. He kissed her right there in the middle of the banquet hall, proving to the entire pack that the fearless human caterer was his true, equal mate. They survived the wilderness, secured their empires, and found perfect accountability in each other. The end. Quick favor, don't go anywhere yet. If you thought Tamsin was brave for sneezing right in the middle of Alpha Leander's deadly silent meeting, wait until you meet the heroine in this next story on your screen. You have to hear this disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It is totally wild. Would you like me to draft a pinned comment for this video that uses your SEO keywords to help it show up in more searches?